Hey guys, in this lesson, we're going to look at the properties of parallelograms. So just a couple of things about parallelograms is that the opposite sides of the parallelograms are congruent. And then as well, the opposite angles of the parallelogram are congruent. Also, the diagonals of the parallelogram bisect each other. Bisect, remember, that means that they cut exactly in half. So you'll have equal parts on each side. And then if there are three or more parallel lines cut off congruent segments on one transversal, then they cut off congruent segments on every transversal. So basically, AC is congruent to CE, as well as BF is congruent to DF. So these are congruent as well. Just a little tidbit there. Okay. Let's look a little vocab right here. We're going to look at consecutive angles. Those are, they share a common side. And so consecutive angles on, for this shape here would be angle J and angle M. Notice they're on the same side. And then angle J and angle K. And then non-consecutive angles basically would not share a common side. So those would be like angles M and angle K, as well as angle J and angle L. Now, obviously, there are more consecutive angles than there are non-consecutive angles. All right, so let's look here. So we're going to use these theorems and some of this vocabulary, as well as some of the things that we've learned before to find missing segments or angles of a parallelogram. So we're going to find the value of x in this parallelogram A, B, C, D. So we need to find x, then we need to find M. And so here, let's look. We have x plus 15 is going to be equal to 135 minus x. Now, I know this because opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. And so solving here, I'm going to go through and add x on each side, and then I will also subtract 15. So I kind of did that in one big swoop. You can do it in two steps. So I have 2x is going to be equal to 120 divided by 2, and so x is equal to 60. Now that's going to help me solve for the angle B or D. So if I plug in 60 for x here, angle B is going to be 75. Now something that I also know about a four-sided figure is that all the interior angles add up to be 360. So if I know that angle B is 75, then angle D is 75, and angle A and angle C are congruent. So basically I have 360 minus 150, and so that would give me 210. So angle A and C combined would give me 210, and then dividing that by 2, since I have two angles, then I would get 105. So angle A would be 105. So we found two things here. We found x to be equal to 60. We used that and the fact that the opposite angles are congruent, and then the interior angles add up to be 360. All of those things added together gave me just x and the angle A. Okay, guys. We are trying to find x and y for this parallelogram. So I know that these two side lengths are going to be congruent, as well as these two side lengths are congruent, which means they're equal. So I can say that 2x plus 5 is equal to 5y. Now you're probably scratching your head at this point because you're thinking, I'm not quite sure where this is going. But hang on just a second, I gotcha. Then I know the other part of that is that x is going to be equal to 7y minus 16. And so if you'll remember back from your Algebra 1 days, this is a system of equations and we can use substitution. So I'm going to substitute 7y minus 16 in for x. So I have 2 times 7y minus 16 plus 5 is equal to 5y. So I'm going to distribute the 2 here and here. So I have 14y minus 32 plus 5 is equal to 5y. And so I know that negative 32 plus 5 is going to give me negative 27. And that's just by combining like terms. So I'm going to subtract 5y from here, and then I'll add 27 to each side. So that way I can move it all over in one big swoop. And so I get 9y is equal to 27, and then divide by 9, and y is equal to 3. Now that gives me y, so I can go back and plug that in for y in my second equation. So x is going to be equal to 7 times 3 minus 16. So this makes 21 minus 16, so x is equal to 5. So I have y is equal to 3 and x is equal to 5. So if that doesn't take you way back to Algebra 1 and make you think a little bit, I don't know what will. Example 3 here, we're looking for the value of y. Then we need to find angle E, F, G, and H, so all of the angle measure. So I know that opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent, so 3y plus 37 is equal to 6y plus 4. So I'm going to move 3y so I can keep y positive, and then subtract 4. So I have 33 is equal to 3y, and divide by 3, and so 11 is equal to y. So that's not where I can stop. I did find the value of y. Now I need to find the angle of E, F, G, and H. Now, I also know that opposite angles are congruent. So really I have to find 2 angles, because the other 2 that would be opposite of those would be congruent. So I'm going to go back and plug in 11 for y in the 6y. I think it's just easier. So 6 times 11 plus 4. So 66 plus 4 is going to give me 70. So angle E is 70, angle G is 70, because their opposite angles have to be congruent. Now angle F and angle H, I also know this is that these 2 angles here, like F and E, those are going to be 180, because these, I have a parallel lines of FE and GH, because parallelogram, and it's cut by the transversal FH, and so then I would have same side interior angles if I kind of extended those lines. So basically they're going to be supplementary, and so this is going to be 110, because angle F plus angle E is going to give me 180. Now if that kind of is kind of rocking your mind right now, because we got systems of equations, we've got a lot of stuff going on, then you can just make sure they all add up to be 360 inside. I also know that angle F and angle H are congruent, so that gives me 110 there as well. Then adding all up should be 360. Okay, let's look at example 4 here. We're going to find the values of A and B. So another system here, just to work this out one more time. So I have 2A minus 8 is equal to B plus 10. And then I have A is equal to B plus 2. So I think I'm just going to use substitution. I'm going to go and replace A with B plus 2. So I have 2 times the B plus 2 minus 8 is equal to B plus 10. Distribute 2B, or not to be, haha, just joking. Plus 4 minus 8 is equal to B. Now that's a B, not a 6. It kind of looks like a 6 there. Plus 10. And so these two get together and they make negative 4. So I am going to do one smooth here. I'm going to subtract B and add 4. And so that gets rid of this, all of that. So I'm left with B is equal to 14. So B is equal to 14, and I'm trying to find A. Well, A is B plus 2, so A has to be 16 because of 14 plus 2. So that's all I was asked to find there, not even those segment lengths. Alright, on the last one here, we have several parallel lines, and we have some transversals here. It says all of those are parallel. A is equal to B, AB is equal to BC, and BC is equal to CD, which all of those are 2, and we know that EF is 2.5. Now, based on the theorem that we talked about at the very beginning, is that if all of A, B, C, and CD if they're all congruent, and then we have another transversal cut here, then these side lengths are all congruent as well. Well, I know that FE is 2.5, so GF has to be 2.5, and HG has to be 2.5. So we talked about a lot of stuff here. And so the main thing that you kind of want to keep in mind is how all this kind of fits together. So we had a couple of system of equations that we had to solve here, and then you also had some theorems and some things that work together. So this is all things parallelograms. Couple things to remember: opposite angles are congruent, and the two bisect each other, and so those are equal on each side of those. So this is it, all properties of parallelograms.